In the beginning, God creates humankind and puts us in the garden and tells us to be stewards. So the metaphors of what it takes to maintain a garden is the same metaphor that I find for what it takes to maintain community. There are things that you tend and things that you care, but from year to year, there are some things that won't make it through the winters. And then there are also things that will drop seeds, and all of a sudden you find things growing where you never actually thought or imagined.
The idea behind this was, let's create a resource, a process, a program that is designed first and foremost for congregations in small town and rural spaces.
In empowering us to live a life of abundant gratitude. My name is Reverend Dr. Kevin Downer, and I am the pastor of the First Congregational Church of Woodstock. Our congregation, actually going back years before I arrived, had been going through a process of trying to understand how to be church today. What is its call? As with many congregations, especially in a rural context, we have declining numbers and graying congregants. So there's reality there. So in 2018, they had done a survey trying to really understand what our core beliefs are, what were some of the competing priorities that kept kind of holding the congregation back. We moved all the way through the process where we were starting to work on our vision, and we came up with 4 possibilities, and then everything stalled. We couldn't figure out a way to move forward. And so around that time, I happened to see a posting in the alumni newsletter. I'm an alumni of Austin Seminary. And there in this little small blurb was this article saying that they were looking for congregations, rural congregations, to participate in this thing called Houses of Hope. And so I did a little research, and then I went to our governing board and I said, hey, check this out.
I was curious about tools. Could I deepen, my toolbox? In my work, I talk with students all the time about what's in theirs. And I don't know that I had refreshed mine necessarily recently. So that was interesting to me.
It's like parallel play a little bit. You're working alongside someone and you know them at some level, but it's not necessarily a deep level. And it's not that we don't have the compassion and the love and the support for each other, we do, but again, you only know what you know, right? So what's been happening throughout this whole program is we've gotten to know each other on such a deeper level.
This whole process that we get with the Houses of Hope is a mechanism, a way, a tool, a framework, the kinds of conversations that we need in order to unlearn all of this noise, all of this fear, all of the fragmentation, and to relearn, like really just how to be first and foremost disciples of Christ. And then how do we do that together to be the body of Christ? And then how do we do that in a way that because we're the body of Christ, we truly are the light in the midst of all this darkness. We truly are the people who are bringing hope to those who feel hopeless. And we really, in one way or another, can resurrect healing in a world, in a nation that is so fragmented. Like for me, that's what it's about. The church is broken and the nation is broken, and this gives us a hope. These are individuals who, by their own testimony, have known each other for a long time, right? Worshipped with each other, volunteered with each other, and have known bits and pieces about each other's lives. As we have now been together, going through the process, sharing our stories, doing the work, exploring the practices, what we found is that individually people are finding ways to name and move through in a very hopeful way some of the challenges that maybe they've held on since childhood. During the discernment process, we had this community potluck, right? Our favorite things. And we were surprised and impressed by how engaged that activity made the congregation. And that, I think, kind of gave us permission to then think, how do we start to bring some of the contemplative practices that we're exploring within the first phase, and then started to continue to explore even deeper within the second phase? How do we bring that into the life of the congregation?
The congregants ended up having really meaningful conversations with their family members, trying to identify, well, what should I bring? Like, what do you think? Lots of phone calls, and then that leads to more, the idea of it just coming from me to we to, the community moving out. That's what was happening. People were having conversations with their family members, and they were sharing stories and bringing up old memories.
It just opened people up to, oh, we're talking about the church. We're not talking about these recipes. The important part is the church, and we got a lot of good feedback from that.
I think people just had the capacity, and they were more relaxed and felt in a space where they could really just start sharing.
People would go to these interesting places that wouldn't normally come up in like day to day, over coffee or something. I think I understood through that, you're a little bit more literally, where are you from, right? What lens are you looking through, or who are you?
I think whenever you're sharing a meal, it opens people up to new ideas, to hear other people. So it was wonderful.
Good morning. Good morning. And welcome to First Congregational Church of Woodstock, where whoever you are, wherever you find yourself on your life or spiritual journey, whatever questions or uncertainties you have, you are welcome and celebrated here. Thank you for being here today as we celebrate this great day that God has created. We have some special guests today, and after I do those introductions. What is God calling us to do, because we're called to be the church? And how do we dream not what's probable, but what's possible? It changes everything.
I think the one that really stood out for me, maybe in the sense of my own growth, was the listening differently. And we had this practice where every evening we were to look at a conversation in the day that was a struggle, where we had a hard time listening, and then to explore what was it that got in my way, what was it that made it hard for me to listen in that conversation. And that reflective practice was so helpful. I started to be in my interactions in the moment differently. And so instead of getting to the end of the day and being like, oh, I wish I had done that differently, I became more aware in the moment of how to ask those questions, or how to be aware of when I could feel myself starting to get a little reactive, and kind of come back to centering myself in love and in God, and be able to be curious instead.
Showing up differently and listening differently are really important for trying to love across division, and I needed that tool. I think whenever we have an opportunity to humanize ourselves and humanize others, we should probably take it.
Being able to listen to differences and respect that they have a different way of looking at things, and my relationship with my husband, we have two very unique ways of looking at our world. But I've learned that he can say things and he can vent his ideas, and I can just listen. I don't have to counter him. And I think I picked that up in this. I'm not sure exactly which section it was, but being able to take in differences and not react to the differences. But it's changed me and my relationship with my husband tremendously.
I'm taking these things out, and using them in other places. And I can see how they make those environments better.
That meant doing a lot of research and work around what is the experiences of rural congregations, what are the experiences of people in rural spaces in small town churches. And so there was a team of people who designed the project, and they originally designed it as a year-long experience where discernment would be this first part, and once you've graduated discernment, you'd move to core capacities, and then you'd move right into the gratitude pathway, and then into the forgiveness pathway, and all of it leading toward hope, building hope. When I started, again, almost 3 years ago, I quickly, coming from the local church, said, we can't get anybody in the church to sign up for anything for more than a month. So a year-long process is just a lot. And so we began to kind of break apart the whole program to figure out, how do we invite people into an experience?
What is blocking the other congregations?
Deep soul relational work is not fast. It's just, it moves very slow. And in fact, kind of glacial. But there are resources far beyond just finances, as we know, right? Time and energy are often the resource that prevent people from joining. We hope that this is going to be restorative for people, but at the same time, you know, it's like therapy. Like, therapy is restorative and also hard, you know, it's exhausting. And some of this work is that deep soul work that leaves you tired and yet renewed. When things get hard, I think that's what we have to turn back to, is tending to and nurturing our souls.
How do we as a congregation create the capacity so that when we have to have some of these like thinking about our future 5-10 years from now, right? There's some big weighty questions that we know, right? So how are we collectively creating the capacity through gratitude and forgiveness to be able to then take that next most faithful step, whatever that may be?
I think when you're really practicing gratitude, you're almost always on the lookout for where the gift is in the point of struggle. It's easy to say I'm grateful for my family every day, but it's harder to say I'm grateful for my relationship with my son because sometimes he challenges me. You know, there's a difference.
To find the small things that you're grateful for, and then finding ways that where did I miss an opportunity to be grateful? What can I do better? So that's helped.
Daily Examine, which was, you know, something obviously right from the beginning asked to educate ourselves on, but, you know, do and practice at home or in our, you know, time not here and just in a group. Have to admit, it was hard to really get into a habit of doing it, and I felt, you know, I'd come to group and I hear other people and I'm like, I'm failing because, you know, my whole life and like what I do, it's, you know, pass, fail, excel, not, I am goal oriented, you know, so I was like, I'm failing, I'm not doing this, everyone else is doing this better than me. But again, trying to be present in the group, listening to the others, and realizing that we came to layer that examine into our lives in different ways. So it's like, all right, well, I'm going to take some of these different ways and see if it works for me. And that made all the difference.
Digging deeper and seeing the blessings in not just the experience, you know, in the challenging experiences in our lives, and also trying to become more graceful in general in response to things. I guess both of those things have now entered into the toolbox.
Recently, when we shared our testimonies, it was a very powerful experience. So we were asked to come think about a time when you received a gift in your life, either long ago, far away, or recently.
I mean, this last session, when we did the testimonials, was really profound for all of us. All I kept thinking was, wow, if we could just take this out to the community, and if people could have this experience of sharing a gift, and it was sharing a gift, right? It was, you know, it was a very positive experience, but it was so profound because almost all of us said, well, I thought this was the gift, but really the gift was this, you know? The gifts were so multidimensional.
I mean, we talk about telling our stories, but how often do we actually take a step back and talk about really name the gifts and name the hidden blessings, and then try to figure, like, where's God in that?
Gratitude is the way God is remembered, for love cannot be far behind a grateful heart and a thankful mind. That sense of gratitude, it's not just about, feeling good. It's really about how we're remembering God. And when we're living in that place of gratitude, I feel like God is there because it's bringing him into everything.
So I said it earlier, but I thank you all for making the time, for coming. There's not a preconceived notion of what an event might look like, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. And really what today's activity is for us to imagine, how do we actually bring hope to our greater community? How can we create an event that both expresses gratitude to some of the unsung heroes within our town, and how do we engage the greater community to encourage others to explore and express gratitude?
So much of what we did when we designed this and when this was built was focused on the individual, the congregation, the community, right? The me, the we, the all. The idea behind everything that we want to do with this project really is about you as an individual, but we don't just live in isolation, right? Like, you have an incredible group of people here in this congregation. You all are the holders of the knowledge of this community. What we worked with in core capacities was really all about, like, how do we listen to our community? And then what does it look like to then show up and share differently in our community? What is our unique voice that can really lead to some healing? And I really just am a firm believer that when we do the work to heal ourselves, and we do the work to heal ourselves within the congregation, that is going to bleed out into the community. And this event has the opportunity to be that symbolism, right? It's not going to be all of it. Like, there's not going to be one event that rules them all and heals everything, right? But it's the opportunity to showcase, this is the work that we believe in and the work that we're doing within this church, and we want to invite the community into it as well.
100%, I feel gratitude is an open doorway for those to walk through and, experience that path to hope. I never really thought about it until this, right? That idea that gratitude will lead to hope. I think that's genius, honestly. I never thought about that.
Yes. That's real impressive. We've got it. Let's just, hey guys, we planned this.
Cultivating joy is something that a person can control. But also, I believe that what you focus on grows. If we are successful in having an event with lots of people and saying thank you, to me that is outside of strife, it's outside of division, it's outside of resource, it's outside of lack. So there's a really great opportunity for that to be joyful. If people come out of this with that as a tool, then that's a really excellent response to living in these times.
See, friends, gratitude is much more than a feeling that is here in an instant and gone in a flash. Gratitude takes us into a deep place, into a way of being. Gratitude's about wholeness, and it's about healing. It's a practice because it's never fully done. It's a practice because it's something we continue to enter into over and over and over again. We do these practices because they're transformative, but they're never just transformative for our own sake. Christianity was never intended to be a solo experience. It is always intended to be the transformation of one for the whole, one for the we, right? Me for the we for the all.
One of the great powers of the Houses of Hope framework is that it really gives us these different kinds of spiritual practices. Been trying to help this congregation understand its direction and how do we participate in God's vision. A lot of that, I still believe, comes from the head. It's thinking our ideas and getting people really to start to listen deeply to the collective voices within the congregation, the collective voices in the broader community, and then to say, where are we sensing God's Spirit showing up in that intersection, where the gifts that we have and the just the natural things that we're gravitating towards meet the needs within the community. And doing it from a spiritually grounded place, I think, is absolutely critical.
I feel hope when I trust that God is with me, when I remember that God goes with me wherever I go, when I remember that God is a strength in which I trust. So, I mean, I always had those things, but I don't think I ever connected them to hope. And I think even when I started in the Houses of Hope program, I was like, I get like the listening differently, showing up differently. I was getting all the practices and all the phases, but I still wasn't quite feeling like I was getting hope until I started connecting it with that sense of trust. So that's what makes things feel hopeful, because if I remember that God, right, gratitude is helping me remember God, and I remember that God is with me wherever I go, then how can I not feel hope?
And with everything that's going on in the world right now, I feel like if everyone could do this program, we would just have so much more, productive conversations.
You alluded to it being long and taking time. Well, good. I didn't want a microwave meal. Like, I wanted to sit quietly with myself, or I want to be surprised by the joy that's in there, right? It's very easy for human beings, I'll speak for myself, to focus on negative, or to remember negative, or, oh, that hurt. And so I seem to be holding on to that. But I'm holding on to joy too,
In the known universe, there is actually more dark matter than there is light. And yet we are called to be light. If we go back and spend the time in nature and in the depths of the stories that we get from tradition and faith, we find the glimmers of hope and the glimmers of light that really help to reorient us, to unlearn the fear, to relearn how it is for us individually and collectively to walk in the light and to bring that light elsewhere. I mean, that is it. I mean, let your light shine.